Hey, welcome. Thanks for hanging out with me today. If you are new here, my name is Mia Danielle, and I help you to create holistic, clutter-free spaces. So if that's something that you're working on, then please, by all means, go ahead and subscribe and turn on the notifications. I release new videos here every Tuesday, and then again on the podcast every Thursday over at the Mind Your Home podcast. Now, I want to talk about the big three reasons to declutter. So there are a lot of little reasons, and we talk about them all the time. I have a whole other video on it about the benefits or advantages of being clutter-free. Things like you're going to have more space, obviously. You're going to have more time. You'll be able to develop your relationships because you're not going to be so busy keeping up after your kids or your partner or like washing loads of dishes and laundry all the time. So there are a lot of little reasons, and even the little nuanced reasons are still important, obviously. But there are three really big, powerful reasons that are kind of at the core for me and most of the people who I see going through my programs like Clutter Cure. It's usually because they have a really strong why that comes down to one of these three big reasons. So that's what I want to talk about today is what are the big three powerful reasons for decluttering and for just getting the clutter out and hopefully living a more holistic and clutter-free lifestyle. So let's dive in. The first thing is support. Now, if you've been following me long or if you've seen any of my free trainings, then you know a little bit about my backstory, but support is the entire reason that I'm here. It's the whole reason that I got into talking about holistic clutter-free spaces in the first place. It's what led me down this journey that I'm sharing with you. So, years ago when I became a single mom, and I'm not anymore, I'm actually going to be getting married in June, so nobody's confused. I've been with Matt for 6 years now, but that wasn't always the case. There was a period of time when it was just me and the girls. They were really young. They were like 2 years old and 4 years old. And I knew at that time that I needed to have a space that was not going to fall apart whenever I needed to take a break. So that became my why that led me down this whole journey to where I am today. Because, back in the day, I wasn't always as like I like to call myself pretty stable now. I feel really stable. I wake up every day and I'm happy and I feel supported and loved and my connections are in place. I feel like I'm on solid ground, but that was not always the case. There was a period of years there where my energy was like a roller coaster. It was ups and downs and every which way. And especially for anybody out there who's suffering from depression or anxiety, especially during the time like this where we've been stuck inside for so long and a lot of those emotions are starting to pop to the surface. Having that support system in place in your home is huge. It is life-changing. It's really so powerful to be able to have a space that just supports you and does what it's supposed to do. I have a whole other video that's all about minimalism and mental health. So you can click that card right here to watch that when this video is done. But how many of you just ever feel like you can't show up as the best version of yourself? Like you don't have the energy every single day to show up at 100% and ready to go. I mean, like maybe Tony Robbins or some select few people out there just have that burning energy as part of their natural charisma and natural personality. But most of us, we're going to have at least a little bit of waves going on in our lives, right? You're going to have days where you feel great and you have energy and you're productive and you're decluttering and cleaning and making everything look beautiful and you just feel on top of things. And then there are going to be days where you just don't. You want to lay in bed, you want to watch Netflix and just check out. Maybe things feel like they're too much and you just need to rest. We all need to have those times of rest. And we all deserve to be able to do that. And so for me, getting the clutter out, and not just getting the clutter out, but getting the clutter out and creating clutter-free, holistic, supportive spaces, that support system that's like built into the walls of your home, essentially. Having that in place meant that I could do that and not have to stress and worry and feel guilty and worried that, I'm going to wake up the next day and everything's going to be a disaster or that things aren't taken care of and I should be down there. We do that whole shoulding all over ourselves. Well, I should be down there taking care of this and that and the other thing. And, I should be doing the dishes. Who's going to do the dishes if I'm not there? Or all of these different things. I've taken that guilt away is just another huge weight off of my mind. And, it really helps. It's like self-care. It helps me to be able to recuperate when I need to recuperate, to get recharged. So, I mean, think about the last time that you felt like you really needed a recharge. I mean, you may be in one of those states right now. You may be like, oh my God, I'm just watching this YouTube video from my bed because I don't have the energy to get up and do other things. This is me procrastinating. And I do that too sometimes, don't worry. But just think about like the last time that you felt like that and what things were going on in your head at that time. Like, did you feel like a little bit guilty for taking that time for yourself, for laying down and just kind of checking out for most of the day and watching Netflix or YouTube videos? Did you feel guilty? Or did you feel like you were being unproductive and have that kind of like heaviness of that procrastination heaviness on you? Were you worried that things were going to completely fall apart and kind of dreading what things were going to look like the next day? So decluttering at least gives you that bare minimum support system right there at home, removing that excess that's not going to topple out and make things chaotic again. But I happen to believe that you can micro-engineer all of the spaces in your home to be like a unique super support system for you personally. Because of course we're all unique, our needs and daily functions are different. But I do have a worksheet that can guide you through the 4 key components to creating a support system in each area of your home. So I totally recommend grabbing the worksheet and diving in so that you can get started on looking at your space a little bit differently. Now, the second big, most powerful, important reason to get rid of the clutter is freedom. Freedom. You know, this is like the number one reason probably that people actually come to me to help them get their clutter out is because they want to experience their version of freedom. Now, freedom looks differently for everybody. If you had asked me 10 years ago, my definition of freedom, it probably would have been like the feeling that you get when you leave a job that you hate. You know, you've packed up all your stuff and you're just walking through the front doors. Freedom. Never have to go in that place again. Now, if you were to ask me my version of freedom, it would probably be something closer to drinking my caramel coffee by a window without crazy thoughts going on in my head, just being able to completely 100% enjoy my cup of coffee and enjoy the scenery of looking out the window. To me, like that is the epitome of freedom inside of my mind, at least for the time being. Maybe freedom to you would be the ability to just have space to breathe inside of your own home without even having to step outside because you just have space and air and light to breathe right there at home. And you can walk from one room to the next without having to worry about tripping on something or stubbing your toe or, spending every other hour digging through all of your drawers because you can't remember where you put anything and it's probably buried underneath something else. And so now you're going through this whole frustrating cycle. Like removing that in itself, that can be freeing, not having to do that anymore. When you know where everything is and you just feel like everything is taken care of. There's also freedom from certain responsibilities. The more stuff that you have, the more stuff you're responsible for. And that's not just for you, it's also if you have kids, it's definitely the case for kids. If you ever told your kid to go clean their room and an hour and a half later, it looks like they haven't even touched it. If they have so many things, then it sometimes is difficult for them to be responsible for that many things and to really logistically be able to tend to and take care of those things. But the same thing is true for adults. We just like to think that we're better at managing all of the things, but even if we are managing them, it's still taking our time. It's still taking these resources that we could otherwise be investing in something else, something that we actually enjoy doing, or some kind of growth. Which leads me to what I consider to be the number 3 biggest, most powerful reason to declutter, and that is growth. Now, this one's a little bit less obvious. It's a little tricky maybe to understand. So I think the best example that I can give is an example that one of my students brought to me. And she wasn't saying, I'm coming here because I need growth, but she did come because she was a software engineer. She had a 7-year-old daughter and she was married. And she said that she spent so much of her time doing this whole churning of picking up and cleaning up. And it was like, she didn't have as much time to invest in going back to school, which she really wanted to do. She wanted to go back and get another degree in software engineering or to invest in just spending time with her kid instead of cleaning up after her all the time. And so that was her primary reason her why, her big, I say it's so powerful when you have a good why. That was her why for wanting to finally get rid of the clutter and create a clutter-free holistic space. And so essentially her reason was growth. She wanted to be able to grow her relationships. She wanted to be able to invest time and energy into another career degree that she enjoyed doing so that she could grow in that area of her life. And I see that so many times for people who don't even necessarily know what they want to do, but once they create the space, then it comes to them. Then they get this inspiration or a new idea comes. And I've said before that sometimes new ideas and passions sprout that you hadn't even thought of before because you didn't have the capacity until you made the space. This is like nature at its best, right? It's the power of pruning. You know, when you prune a plant, it allows that plant to grow bigger and to grow in the direction that you're wanting it to grow. So by removing the excess branches that are not doing so good or that aren't bearing fruit, you're then allowing the plant to reinvest its resources and its nutrients into the branches that are thriving and that are going in the direction that you want the plant to grow. Well, we're the same way. By removing the excess in our lives, especially when it's in our home and in our environment, it gives us the resources, the time, the energy, the mental clarity to be able to invest into other things, to grow in other ways. Same is true with our schedule, right? You can't have time to do all of the things that you want to do, so you're making decisions. And sometimes you have to prune out the things that aren't just worth your time in order to have more time to invest in the areas where you're wanting to grow. You know, whether that's growing relationships or growing your knowledge in an area or growing physically by going to the gym. We grow by investing our resources, and we can only invest our resources by pruning, by decluttering and removing all of the excess. And where you grow just depends on where you choose to reinvest the time that you make space for, or the space that you make space for. Another interesting thing to think about under this whole umbrella of growth is something that the book The Power of Habits calls keystone habits. So keystone habits are habits that you build in one area that then impact other areas of your life. It's like one central habit change that leads to other habit changes. Studies found, for example, that when you make a positive change in one area, like you quit smoking, structural changes actually occur inside of your brain that make it easier for you to make changes in other areas. So not only does decluttering your space or creating a holistic clutter-free space that makes you feel good and makes you happy give you more space and more time and more freedom and more support, but just the act of doing that, the act of decluttering and making that space is a new habit that can supercharge other habits that you're wanting to build. So they found, for example, that people who had clutter-free spaces also tended to have better finances and better health. Food for thought. To me, these are the three biggest, most powerful reasons to get the clutter out. These are the reasons that you should be decluttering, not just for the sake of decluttering or for trying to achieve some perfectionist, pristine environment. It's really about the deeper core that supports you and provides freedom and allows you to grow. Do not forget to grab this worksheet so that you can make some holistic, meaningful changes inside of your space, and I'll catch you here next week.